Welcome to another Left Stick, Right Stick Little Nightmare story narration, chapter 3.5, The Twin Chefs. As Six ventured along the tunnels, she hoped to be distanced from those grotesque chefs. However, as she dropped down into the next room, she realized she was far from done with them. The cold storeroom hanging with meats sent shivers down her spine, more so than the fear from the chefs. She walked out into the next room and found the next door was locked. What could she do? She was hesitant to call the elevator, but looking around, she had no other choice. As she walked up to the elevator, she pressed it. But as she did so, she knew something was not right. She ran back into the freezing storeroom and hid in a box. Lucky her senses were right. One of the chefs came in to inspect the hanging meats, shaking the box that lay right above Six's head. But thankfully the cold air hindered the chef's ability to smell Six, as well as the tasty, smelly cheese. As he walked on further into the room, Six was given the opportunity to run around and escape from the box she was hiding in. She would wait a bit more before the chef was further away. Soon he was far away enough, Six dashed for the elevator. Although, as soon as she went into the elevator, it had alarmed the chef. Six was on edge, but her senses were on point as she found a little cubby to crawl into, hiding as the chef came up from the elevator. I took a brief look around, but didn't notice anything. Maybe the chef was not so smart after all. He seemed to have a short attention span and didn't look for very long, and he carried on back to the kitchen with his job of cutting up and slicing up meat. Six slowly looked on as she crawled out of her hole and ran towards the room the chef was in. She took care to stay hidden under the tables and against the walls, as the chef was distracted by cutting, slicing at the meat. He was too preoccupied to notice anything, as Six slowly crawled up around him. Although Six was frightened for a second as the chef approached. Luckily he was only getting stuff from the table, and the blood-covered nature of his hands prevented him from smelling Six. Six walked on, but she noticed the key lay on his table. She would have to do something to distract him. Luckily in the next room there was a meat grinder and a button just at the right height. She pushed it, and as she did so she dashed away, running up the table, grabbing the key. The chef was too distracted by the meat grinder to hear or notice Six. She ran back towards the elevator. She'd have to be quick. She didn't have much time. The elevator was sure to attract the chef's attention again. She rushed on as soon as the elevator opened, fumbling to put the key into the door. But as she did so, she finally pushed it in and pushed it open with all her strength, hoping the chef would not be so close behind. She pushed with all her might as the chef approached. Luckily for her, there was another box to hide in. She hid in as the chef came in, fumbling in. Looked around. Luckily, the darkness in the box hid her from view as he fumbled on into the next room. These chefs really didn't put much effort into looking. Six noticed a little hatch, serving hatch or garbage hatch. She wasn't sure yet, but she jumped on in, and hopefully she'd get away. She landed in the garbage chute. There was a pile of rubbish, but interestingly enough, she felt no sense of repulse being in the dank, rotting pit. Her mind was preoccupied about getting away from the chefs, but she looked around and she found a stairway she could leave this garbage dump. She didn't think long about her disgust as she walked along this tunnel, and it turned out she was actually in the sewage pipes for the kitchen, the main kitchen right above her. At least she thought maybe the garbage stench would help mask her own smell from the chefs. But as she was peeking up, she noticed the chefs working behind throwing dishes. She took the chance to climb up, but clearly the chefs still noticed her despite being preoccupied. They fumbled around, looking for her, but she hid under the tables and ran across into the next room, hiding under the dark tables. A chef followed her in, but didn't seem to notice her at all, despite looking under some tables. Luckily, she was at the other end of the table. Six was starting to think that these chefs were quite dumb. As the chef left, Six's heart was still beating out of her chest. She climbed out, looking around the room for what she could do next. There wasn't much, but she noticed a switch there. Maybe she'd flip it, and maybe that would help her. But she was still scared of the chef returning. Despite being confident that the chefs were quite dumb, she was still wary, because the chef had looked under the table before. What if she'd found her? Looking on back into the next room, she saw the chef walked away. She climbed up and flipped the switch. It started the overhead conveyor rail. This was good, Six thought. She can climb back onto it and get away from them once and for all. The chef fumbled back in with the plate, and he actually dropped the plate and didn't even bother picking it back up. The chef didn't notice Six, thankfully, as she was hiding in the darkest corner of the room. The chef walked away. Six remembered the tall pile of dishes that the chefs were working on. She'd have to climb up that to reach the hooks and grab onto the conveyor belt and out and away from these chefs. She slowly creeped back on, keeping close eye on where the chefs were, making sure she would not attract their attention. She slowly walked on over, hiding under the tables and worktops, and cleverly using the phone to her advantage. Seeing the chef's stupidity, Six was starting to feel very courageous, and maybe a bit too arrogant. As she saw the chefs move on, she saw an opening, hoping that the dishes would block her view. Hiding in the foam, she creeped on and started climbing, but the chef noticed her. For a second there, Six thought she was done for, but luckily the chef fumbled and missed as she climbed on and jumped and swung away. Six was laughing to herself. Yes, I can finally get away from them. But another chef was just following right below Six, and there were doors in the way. As soon as she entered the next room, she saw the other chef had actually been waiting there. She'd have to drop. Now, she was worried again, heart beating as another chef burst through that door. She ran with all her might, forward onwards. And as she ran, the chef actually picked up a bottle and threw it towards Six, narrowly missing her. She fumbled along, quickly dashing and jumping on, luckily grabbing on to the conveyor hook. As she looked back, the chefs could not reach her now as she crossed this void. As she dropped down, finding her footing, Six had a quick look back at the chefs. She was finally free from them at last. What a narrow escape that was. Hope you guys enjoyed this chapter of Little Nightmares. Don't forget to click that like button if you like this story narration, and subscribe to find out what happens next on Six's journey.